Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet on the 4th of November, and we start the meeting by asking for apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Rice.
Thank you very much. And do we have any disclosures of interest for today at all? No disclosures of interest being... We now have minutes. The minutes of the meeting that was held on the 7th of October. Does anybody have any comments to make, or otherwise can I confirm and sign those minutes? Can somebody just, Councillor Gist, you're happy to confirm that I can sign those minutes, and Councillor Coles affirms as well. So thank you very much indeed. I can sign those minutes as being the true record of that meeting. Moving on, the next part of the agenda is the Part A, matters to refer to Council, there are none. Part B, matters for decision by the Cabinet, and the first one is under my portfolio, which is about the Armed Forces Covenant Pledge. And I'm very pleased to be able to introduce this item. The Council signed an Armed Forces Community Covenant in 2012, and that there was a revision to that at a national level with the Armed Forces Act in 2006 as amended in 2021, which came into force in November 2022. We've been fulfilling the requirements of that new act since then, but the pledge provides an opportunity to reflect the changes that have been made at a national level more formally. So the Council now is a specified body. There's one particular change that has come from the change at a national level, is that the Council is now a specified body with recognised armed forces related functions for housing under the Armed Forces Act 2021, when that was introduced. So there is to be, subject to the approval today, there will be a covenant signing event on the 6th of November hosted by Warwickshire County Council. So we'd like to be able to get this covenant signed off today so that we can be represented. And just to clarify that this falls within the scope of the council plan, because it links directly to one element of the council plan, which is that residents and communities, we act in their best interests and of residents and communities throughout the district. So that falls very, very squarely under that. One of the things that is worth mentioning is that we are bronze, we've always been a bronze award here, but the district council now is working towards silver award accreditation, and that scheme and that award is already, we are working towards that already, and the ultimate aim is that we will go for a gold award. So I don't know if anybody, those people that were, Councillor Coles, I think you were involved in some of the negotiation on this. I don't know whether you want to add a comment at this point. And then I'll fill Councillor Wally-Hoggins in at that point.
Yes, just to say we have, we've done some good work and updated the covenant. I think the most important thing to say is that the covenant is a live document. We don't sign it, if we agree it, sign it on Wednesday and then pop it back on the shelf. It can be reviewed. If new requirements are identified, we can move with it, and we can look at moving through silver to gold in the longer term. I've been working with Councillor Skinner and Councillor Padgham on this as well. They've been enormously helpful in getting the work done to get it to this point. And we are going to actively take an interest in how it's going, recording what we're doing, but recording also what we've done, which I think is very important, and what our plans will be going forward as well. So I think, you know, it's going to be very much an active, involved piece of work that we'll carry through as part of the council plan and our work as we go through. Yeah.
Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
Yes, of course, all of this work relating to this motion or relating to the Armed Forces Covenant was in fact brought to Council as part of the Capitalising on Military Talent motion in 2023. So we are heartened that that this council is taking this seriously, and as an organisation we recognise the talents that our armed forces personnel bring to the fore. I do think that we should now be perhaps working with other businesses across the town in order to promote the value of doing this, and that we celebrate Armed Forces Day across the district. But again, we are pleased that the council has brought our really brought to the fore the work that we did with regarding our capitalising on military talent motion in 2023, and we fully endorse what you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's actually it has actually brought us up to date with legislation that was brought in 2021, came into force in 2022, and of course the council are now bringing us up to date with that. We were out of date when we first took this up. Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Councillor Junid. Yeah, we discussed this at Overview Scrutiny on Friday and fully endorsed this. Obviously, I've got big associations with the Royal British Legion Home in Southam, Glarness House, is the county councillor for the ward and a long time in my district ward as well. So actually went to the launch of the Poppy Appeal last week, and the stories you hear from ex-service people are inspiring. They do deserve our support and help, and the issues around about housing are particularly pertinent, and I'm sure Annette and the team have got the finger on the pulse, shall we say, and that is really positive. So wholeheartedly endorse and support from Overview and Scrutiny, and this is the right thing to do, and hopefully we're on our way towards the goal of a gold, so that would be helpful. We'll be soon hitting that target, shall we say soon. Thank you.
And thank you very much indeed for that. We have recommendations. We now have not only a member of staff that is recognised under the covenant, but also a councillor. So what we need today is your agreement so that the Council's Armed Forces Covenant Pledge be approved, that the Chief Executive, in consultation with myself as Leader of the Council, be authorised to agree minor modifications to the pledge as may be necessary from time to time. Once we've been able to agree this, then we can go to the signing of the covenant on the 6th of November. So I'm going to ask for somebody to confirm. I'm happy to support the recommendation, and Councillor Coles is happy to second that recommendation. Now I need to know whether you all approve so that we can sign it and move forward. Are you all happy to accept that? Thank you very much indeed. The next item also comes under my portfolio, and that's the Strategic Risk Register. And this is important for a number of reasons. The risk register is updated regularly. It looks at the last strategic risk register was looked at in March of this year, and going forward we need to review it and consider keeping all the further actions that we take to manage the risks facing the organisation. There are a number of risks that that the council and all our residents and all that our country needs to face up to at the moment, and therefore we need to make sure we've got the actions in place to manage them. We've got obviously the ongoing impact of cost of living changes. We've got to make sure that we are not subject to a lack of growth in our economic development. We've got to be able to have, and this was brought to mind by recent events that happened in Spain, the ability to respond to emergencies, vital task that this district council has. We need to make sure that we've got business continuity, that we're able to retain staff, that we're able to meet our planning obligations, meet community safety issues, cyber threat, climate change, and make sure that the services to those with disabilities is able to be met, as well as our procurement. Those are the highlighted priorities that we're looking at under the risk register. Now, has anybody got any particular comments they want to make about any item that's on that risk register? Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
Yes, I'm particularly concerned about the several items on this risk register which are denoted as being of risk level, of a high risk level. What I'm particularly concerned about is the financial matters regarding the funding of the council and the way that council is spending money. That is at a high risk level here, according to the risk register that I'm seeing. But perhaps most alarming of all is that safeguarding children and vulnerable adults within this district is also denoted as being of high risk. And I would like to know, with regard to that matter, how we're going to reduce that as we move along. I'm looking online. The problem is with the paper documents, you can't actually see the colour denotion of the risk register. So we're looking at risk 6, safeguarding children and vulnerable adults.
The paperwork assesses the risk, and it is to some degree subjective, but it's based on an assessment of the likelihood of something occurring and the impact it might have, and it identifies not the gross risk, but it then looks at the likelihood. And I will bring in the Deputy Chief Executive at this stage, because there is a difference between the likelihood, the impact, and the actual risk register, risk level that is being judged.
Thank you, Leader. If it helps the Cabinet this morning, the way that we have a risk sort of policy, and the way that sort of the information is set out in this report is we sort of have the basic risk, which is on the left-hand column, and we score in sort of likelihood and impact, which gives a risk level. The mitigation, which I think is what Councillor Wally Hoggins was asking about, are set out in the right-hand column, and then there's a revised sort of net risk sort of assessment, which comes out at 8. If you move to page 39, there's an extract there that comes from our sort of overall risk strategy, where it's been set that risks of sort of 12 and above would be unacceptable, or will need to sort of be specifically recorded to the Cabinet. The risks at lower levels are considered sort of acceptable within that policy. So the mitigations that we have in place, which are the DBS checking, the safeguarding training, CCTV, the items set out on page 32, are felt by your management team to sort of mitigate the risk from 12, which would be unacceptable, down to 8, which would be acceptable under the policy. It is obviously a significant risk, and we're very sort of cognizant this is a key area for us, so it's very much on our minds, but hopefully that's helpful.
Can I bring in Councillor Coucher at this point in time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's two issues that I would quite like to raise this morning. One is clearly, I think, something that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on, which is unemployment. Certainly the national insurance rise is probably going to lead to a rise in unemployment, and I think we need to monitor that very, very closely to ensure that we're taking that on board. And the second issue really relates to the South Warwickshire local plan, where at the moment we have the plan is supposedly going forward to 2050 to allow us a sufficient time to get the infrastructure that we need to support growth within that plan. And we know that Warwick, our partners in preparing that plan, may have a different view about the end date. So I think that remains a risk that we have at this point in time that we do need to take on board.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody else. Councillor Crumpton, do you want to raise an issue?
Oh, sorry, thank you, Councillor Jin. I think the only one, like I say, with the current net risk sorry, I'm testing these teeth for somebody. Yes, too many. Yeah, on page, I think it's page 29, the one with the highest net risk, current net risk is the recruitment and retention of staff, and I think over in scrutiny have raised that concern. And, it's quite, when we're losing key staff, particularly heads of service who are leaving for the pastures. No, I won't look at anybody on my right-hand side there. And it is, obviously continuity. We've got the right leadership, we've got the right staff, and obviously they are our best and biggest asset. So it is important. So we do need to make sure we've got the right packages to recruit and retain the staff, particularly with the cost of living crisis, the high cost of houses here, and you know, if people are commuting with the relatively high transport costs as well. So I think that is a key one that overviewing scrutiny would be looking at on a regular basis, and I don't think that would be unfair to do so.
No, I totally agree that we've got to, being able to retain staff and retain the quality of staff that we have here is key, and it's one that that we addressed early on. We had a staff strategy action plan was developed, mainly to make sure that we had good quality working relationships, but working atmosphere that here at the offices, that we were able to support staff, and that is being developed and taken further. So it is something that I think this is something that all local government right across the country is experiencing issues with, but it is something that we do need to take on board. And overview and scrutiny, we would welcome them having a look at that. Thank you very much indeed. Now then, any other items that anybody wants to raise from that? Otherwise, we have a recommendation before us, and the recommendation is that the strategic risk register, which is in the Appendix 1, be reviewed and consideration given to whether any further actions should be undertaken to manage the risk managing the organisation. And we've had some suggestions as to that. I'm happy to propose that recommendation. Are we having a seconder? Anybody? Councillor Coucher, thank you very much indeed. Are all the Cabinet in favour? All approve? Thank you very much indeed. And we welcome the next review of that one, because it will be a regular review of the Strategic Risk Register. Moving on now to the resources portfolio, which is Councillor Curtis, and the first one is the Capital Budget Monitoring Period 1, and over to Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. This report provides Cabinet with the details of the capital budget monitoring for period 1 to 6, so 1st of April 24 to 30th of September 24. I'd like to thank Nicola for preparing the report and appendices. With the amendments agreed by Cabinet to date, the total expenditure budget for the current year, including 106 and slippage, as outlined in the 2023-24 capital budget outturn report, now totals £7,921,331, as against the just over 13 million in the 2022-23 capital budget outturn report. And that reduction is largely due to the £5 million that was allocated for refuse vehicles. So that's dropped quite considerably. There are a number of... I was unable to attend overview and scrutiny on Friday, but I did watch... I was I think one of 6 people watching online. So I thought it might be useful just to address some of the very helpful points that were raised. One question was raised about the slippage of 653,000 in the planned maintenance programme on page 52. The maintenance programme has basically fallen behind since COVID, with both staff and contractor shortages, hence that slippage. But now maintenance programme is now being planned, will deliver timely and cost-effective maintenance. So hopefully we will get back onto an even keel where we will be spending that planned maintenance budget of around 350,000 on an annual basis and catching up with that. There were a lot of questions, and I'll address it now because it may help, around the impact of the budget. And actually, as Mr. Burrell just said to me, fortunately, the budget from the government has been announced before we produce our budget, so we do have time to take into account some of the impact. We're all aware of the increase in national insurance, and that is going to obviously have a direct impact on staff costs. Mr. Burrell, along with other colleagues in the sector, are working to fully assess all the implications of the budget, and the LGA is also seeking clarification on whether or not, or how much LGAs will be protected from any of these increases. Government has assured that LGA settlements will be inflation-proof, but what that actually means we really don't know until we get the full government settlement. Having spoken to Mr Burrell, I feel we're confident that we have sufficient resilience in the MTFS to cope with these additional pressures without negatively impacting service to residents. And as an administration, we're determined to ensure that we invest to save, and with prudent strategic investments, we can ensure this council will be more resilient in the future and better able to deliver those services that residents rely on. So I think I'm quite happy to obviously take further questions around this area, but I think until we have all the facts and figures at our fingertips, which we won't know until we have the full government settlement, I don't want to set too many hairs running. So I think that's all. Happy to take any further questions on the capital budget monitoring report, but it comes with the recommendations that the position on capital expenditure and income for the period 1 to 6 of 2024-25 is received, and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet or the portfolio holder. Thank you, Leader.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Crump.
I'm glad to see Councillor Curtis was one of the 6. My 5 other relatives who were watching boosted the numbers. No, on a serious note. Yeah, we discussed this in quite a bit of detail. The Overall Scrutiny Committee, we're going to form a budget standing panel after a training session we're going to have on later this month. Councillor Curtis is right that we did spend quite a bit of time on this, and we've perhaps got some ideas, recommendations, or just some form of communication, different adjustments that might make it easier for residents. Because when you see initially a capital budget of almost 8 million, 7.921 million on table 1.2 on page 44, and you see you spent 96,000 plus 362,000 committed, it's, you know, to the average person in your street, you're thinking, wow, they've got £8 million and they spent a fraction of it. I think some explanation, breaking down the capital budget a bit more, would be helpful, i.e. some of this money relates to future years, some of this money relates to SIL money that can be spent by partners and isn't likely to be spent in 24-25. Because when you're getting slippage of millions of pounds coming forward to members of the public, they are thinking, oh, what's going on here? So I think some explanation. I think there are many genuine reasons why the money hasn't been spent, but I think that needs to be teased out a little bit more. So I think that would be helpful. Secondly, there's been some reassurance from Councillor Curtis about inflation on these projects. We've all heard about the cost of living crisis, and when some of these original capital schemes were brought in a few years ago, inflation has increased significantly. So again, a pound today is worth far more than a pound in 5 years' time. So again, again, some certainty around the inflation on budgets. Again, we spoke about unspent SIL money, the impacts of central government budgets, etc. And the other thing we sort of like teased out was with having, and Mr. Perks was here and he was advising, and he said I was saying one or two things that were correct. I don't know how much I'd paid him for that, but he did say at the meeting, is the fact that there are implications from the capital budget onto the revenue, particularly terms around balances that we can invest, and are, at the moment with almost £1 million worth of interest receipts, that is propping up the revenue budget. Is far higher than originally forecast a few years ago in the MTFS. It's good Mr. Burrell's not in there, so I like that as well. So I think there are implications that if we do have a scheme or a programme of schemes where we are accelerating the works, the capital works, our balances will go down, and then with our balances going down, we'll have less money to invest. But when you see what's happening in the budget, and I'll talk briefly about in the Treasury Management side, that it is expected now that the interest rates will go down less slowly than anticipated, more slowly than anticipated. So therefore, we will potentially have lower balances, but the actual interest rates they'll be paying might counteract that. So it's all interlinked, but we felt that, on the whole, we a good paper, but perhaps we need to be slightly more smarter with explanations and making it easier for members of the public who look at this and are not accountants to understand firsthand, oh, you've only spent 96,000 but you've got a massive budget of 8 million, what's going on? So again, I think it's all about being open and transparent, so thank you.
Can I just bring in Councillor Coucher at this point, and then I'll bring in the portfolio holder, and then I've got a question from Councillor Wally-Huggins as well.
Thank you, Chair. I think those points which Councillor Crump has just made about transparency is very, very important, because I think there appears to be large amounts of money here, but actually, as we know, quite a lot of that is committed. I think, as we found with administering the SPF and the rural funds, which I have to say, I think the council has done an extremely good job in managing the recipients of those funds and making sure that the money is actually going out the door. I'm a bit concerned about SIL money and also 106 money, that we're not actively managing the people we're paying actually to actually spend that money, and therefore we are seeing substantial slippage there, not caused directly by us, but because we're perhaps not managing the spenders of that money as well as we might. I think the largest item that we've got here is a substantial amount of uncommitted money in relation to housing. And I know we're very, very keen to get on and actually get some of that spent. And that's a major priority, which I know my colleague Councillor Coles is working on at the moment. But we do need to make sure that that isn't just money sitting in the bank, that actually we're utilising that when we know that we've got substantial housing need within the district. Thank you.
If I bring in the Councillor Curtis at this stage, and then I'll bring in Councillor Wally-Huggins afterwards.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think Councillor Crump makes a very good point that members of the public see these very large sums of money, don't necessarily look at Appendix 1 to see where these sums are being allocated to. And I think if we can look at how we can present, probably not in these reports, but have some separate narrative around what our capital investment and capital expenditure is going to be over the next few years, I think that can only be a good thing and further transparency. So, Councillor Crump, thank you for making that suggestion.
Councillor Wally-Huggins.
Yes, my questions were really around the transparency of what the money is being spent on thus far, because then that gives a view for the public as to the value for money they're getting for the council tax that they're paying. And also, I'm just seeking a little bit more understanding with regards to the budgets and the reserves that we've got. If these the resources are going to help us to act nimbly on behalf of our residents who are being increasingly cash strapped, if you like, because I know that when the budget that we received last week is only half the story, really, that when we get the settlement figures shortly, I think that's before Christmas, if I'm right in thinking that actually that may be another tranche of matters to be sorted out. For example, the percentage increases of council tax that will be permitted, etc. So it is really about how you're going to report that back to us and the implications on the budget for all of us and the spending for residents. I think it's being the things that I'm hearing are very alarming. I'll just leave it at that at this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Passingham, do you want to come in?
My question is about value for money as well. At the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Whaley-Hoggins brought up the question of this £500,000 allocated to Ellimadge Hospital and for the doctor's surgery to move in there, which they haven't taken up after 2 years because of all the circumstances around the Ellenbadge Hospital. But also there was £900,000 allocated to a health and wellbeing centre, which was paid to Swift in order to build this large new building. And it seems that now, because Swift can't get people to move in there, the whole of the ground floor will be allocated to Stour Health and Wellbeing Partnership for running facilities and event services from all over Shipston. And they'll take a lot of the custom away from the Townsend Hall, which is already struggling, which is the main community hall in Shipston. And so we might, it's really unintended consequences, and if we can avoid these sort of things happening, I don't know how we can do it, but it probably means that the council is going to be left with having to support the Townsend Hall, as they have done with the hall in Ulster and other places around. So it seems that this £900,000 might not have been used to the best effect, but I don't know if there's any way of knowing that sort of thing when sealed money applications are brought to the council.
Yeah, I'll bring in Councillor Curtis at this point, but the problem is that when the monies are assigned as a result of development, the actual spend is not by us, it's by others, and it's in their timetable on what to do with that. Just a little correction, I hope you don't mind me, but the Greg Hall in Ulster is actually independently, it's not funded by the District Council. So, you know, I do know that the Shipston, you know, the community facilities at Ellenbadge is as a result of Section 106. I'll bring in Councillor Curtis, and does the Deputy Chief Exec want to say anything first?
Yes, if you don't mind, Leader. Whilst Councillor Paskingham raises some sort of very valid and interesting points, I was just going to remind the committee we are here to look at the sort of capital budget monitoring at the moment. Yeah. If the Cabinet were minded to sort of enter into a sort of a detailed discussion about the issues that Councillor Paskingham raises, I'm happy to get officers to prepare you a more detailed report on those topics, because I don't think they would be very comprehensively covered in the papers that you've got today, so as we can deal with sort of fact rather than speculation.
The details will obviously come when we do our proper budget. You'll be able to see everything, but this is the monitoring up to now. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Mr Burks, yes, I think that would be extremely helpful, rather than, I'd like to be much more fully informed before I would make any comment on that, so a report specifically about that issue would be very welcome. Thank you.
We now have the recommendation that Councillor Curtis has already outlined, and I think you've proposed it. Just to confirm that you have proposed.
Yes, I'd like to propose those two recommendations.
We need a second. Councillor Grocott has seconded it, and now we need to move it to the whole cabinet. Are you happy to accept the recommendations? All agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the second item from Councillor Curtis, which is the revenue budget monitoring period. And again, this is a monitoring review, which is looking at the revenue expenditure and income. Councillor Curtis, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Jessica Nails has done a very good report on appendices. A few comments, and then happy to take questions, of course. Point 21 on page 77. No, that's not page 77. Sorry, it's point. The estimated.
59.
Yes. No, I'm not going to. I'm a recovering viola player, so there we are. The estimated revenue outturn has improved again from an estimated unfavourable outturn of £597,000 last year to an estimated favourable outturn of £685,000 for 24-25. That's a continued improvement from September's position of an estimated favourable outturn of £400,000. It is still relatively early days, but I think it's more reassuring that it's a favourable estimated outturn than an unfavourable estimated outturn. A few other comments on page 60. 3.1, this is a new item, the residential arrears from the Help Fund. I asked Jessica about this, and the Help Fund credit write-offs in this report detail historic loans paid to individuals who are in financial need, enabling them to pay their rent and stay in their properties. The intention is that this would be repaid. However, being realistic, it's been found that some will be unable to do so, and as a result, these amounts are likely not to be recovered, hence the write-offs. However, the intention of the scheme is that by avoiding eviction, we are saving costs on having to provide additional and probably less satisfactory B&B accommodation. The council tax and NNDR write-offs are within the expected parameters, and I did query, normally in this in these write-offs there are housing benefit overpayments, but there are none over £1,000, which is why it doesn't appear in this report. Again, there are a few queries from overview and scrutiny, which I'll just touch on. Councillor Littlewood raised a point about off-street parking and planning unfavourable variances. And Mr Perks gave an excellent reply and pointed out that it is the service managers who are responsible for managing their budgets, and if there were a continuing significant variance that would have a major impact on the MTFS, then that could require a change of strategy or policy that would need to be taken by Cabinet. So again, emphasising really that these financial reports give an indication of the financial health of the council. Councillor Crump asked about car parking budgets more generally. And yes, this is a significant income stream. It is adversely affected by weather, which is beyond our control, road works earlier this year, and as I previously said, it is an important indication, or perhaps an important indication, of the wider economic climate about which we have little control. Councillor Littlewood also asked a question about the refuse collection, over the clarification over what is meant by lower levels of recycling rebate. Again, Mr Perks gave an excellent reply. I'll give a little more detail. Gate fees, so the fee we pay to take the tonnage, take the waste in, have increased from, I think it was 75 to 93 pounds.
We budget this, it is where we budget.
Yeah. So the budget, the gate fees are as we expected. But a major factor in the variance has been the drop in recyclate payments that we get per tonne, which has fallen from a budget of £35 a tonne to, in April and May, we were only getting about £7 a tonne, and this is back up to £20 per tonne now. It is very volatile, and lest members of the Cabinet think that we were imprudent in setting that level, the original budget level of £35 a tonne, members of the MRF consortium were advised that the budget would be in the region of £35 to £52 per tonne. So the original budget that we expected was not unrealistic. Some local authorities have budgeted for far higher recyclate fees. And there is a pressure, but again, we're reassured that it is manageable, those additional pressures. Planning fees, Councillor Crump asked about the unfavourable variance of £100,000. Is it an indicator of wider economic performance? And again, it's not clear cut. There may be fewer applications with increased costs. There is a delay between an application being banked, and certainly if it's a major development, it's going to take several years before that actually comes through. The government has also indicated, and I'm sure we're all aware of this, it's going to bring forward legislation to allow local authorities to set planning fees, which should allow full cost recovery. Is that correct, Richard? Well, yes. We don't know the detail of that yet, so again, we're waiting on that. I think Councillor Wally-Hoggins mentioned earmarked reserves just now, and as part of the budget setting process, which we are currently going through, we will be taking a deep dive into all the earmarked reserves to ensure that they are still required for the purposes for which they were originally set aside. So, the recommendations before the Cabinet are that the actual net variance as at period 6 and the estimated revenue outturn for 2024-25 are received, and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by a further report to the Cabinet portfolio holder, and that the write-offs contained within paragraph 3.1 are noted. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. If there's no further comments, because Councillor Crump and Councillor Waller-Huggins, did you want to come in at this point?
I'm glad to see Councillor Curtis did keep awake through OSC to listen to the questions and points raised and answer most of them really well, so thank you for that. I think there's a couple of things that we still haven't been touched on, and we've sort of like danced around on a bit as well, is the impact on growth. And, you know, we did speak about is the planning for income a barometer of the condition of the local economy. And I think Councillor Curtis has come up with a fair and reasonable answer to that. I know that obviously the new government's financial targets were based on growth, and then obviously potential implications on the private sector, our small businesses in particular, which are a heartbeat of our district and particularly the town itself. You know, there are potentially pressures on those. So I think the council has a duty to try and support them as much as possible, and I think they will do. So that's one key point as well. I did raise the point about car parking income, and Mr Perks says that is only increased every 2 years, I believe. And looking at the increase from 23-24 to 24-25, thanks to Jessica providing me information. If Jessica's watching, thank you very much. That went up about 5.3%. Which, you know, looking back with hindsight, was that realistic, especially when looking at all the factors in the economy. And if it hadn't been that increase, had it been a 2% increase, it would have probably been on target on the income figures, outturn figures. So I think we do need to, you know, that's quite a volatile one, and volatility is difficult. And as an accountant, you know, we like prudence and stability and all sorts of things like those keywords, Richard, that are difficult to maintain sometimes. So I think really because it's a big budget of 3.5 million nearly, we really need to make sure we're looking at that properly, because a 2%, 3% variation on that is significant compared to a 2%, 3% on a £1,000 budget sort of thing. So I think that's one of the things the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be looking at as the budget standing panel. And then obviously the implications of things as well. You know, we've talked about, Councillor Curtis again was listening really well, we talked about the weather, the roadworks, park and ride, and the implications as well. And obviously one of the implications of a successful park and ride is, one, the money goes to the county council, so therefore that money is not going to the district council, but then you've got the positive effect of car sharing, the reduced number of the cars and less congestion. So, you know, it's a fine balance. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration, and working with the partners. And I think the portfolio holder from the county agreed to work with the district on Friday to see how we can close that circle and combine income generation as well as active travel, reducing the amount of pollution, and you know, making the place easier to get into. So I think that's quite positive. So the key thing is growth is been mentioned by Councillor Curtis, myself, and you know, we need to make sure that we've got a happy, healthy, positive environment for our residents as well. So I'll thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for pointing out that the implications of all the partners that we work with and how reliant we are on organisations such as Warwickshire County Council as well as government. So that is useful. Councillor Waller-Huggins, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say that within this budget management, budget monitoring report, it discloses that there are 21, which is well over 50%, 21 matters show an unfavourable variance. I'm particularly concerned about that number of unfavourable variances Forgive me if I haven't counted it properly. It was just a miss by 1 or 2. All right, not too many. But what I'm concerned about is that the messaging that gives regarding the prudent budget management and, of course, the prudent budget setting in the first place, because that is a significant number of unfavourable variances. And I would also like to place on record my thanks for some of them have got reasons for the unfavourable variances there, but I think, again, like the last item, a little bit more detail about the reasoning for that would be greatly appreciated. But 21 unfavourable variances does not reflect well on this council's budget management. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I actually have kept the revenue budget monitoring for previous years, and it's actually not incomparable at all. But Councillor Curtis can probably respond to that earlier better than I can. It is a monitoring report as at the current moment, not the full monitoring for the whole year. Councillor Curtis.
Yes, thank you. I mean, obviously, that is a significant number of unfavourable variances, but as you say, that is at period 6. If we look at the estimated, I'm sorry, I haven't added them up, but I think the estimated outturn position for the year end gives a rather more favourable position, and referring to my comment in the first report, the favourable outturn position at the end of the year is now 685,000, as against an unfavourable variance at this time last year, I think it was 400,000 from memory. So yes, Councillor Wally-Hoggins, there are absolutely valid points that you make. We can ask for further reports to examine more detail of what is making any of these variances, but without being complacent, and I wouldn't be sitting here otherwise. I think if we look at the outturn for the year end, we are still on target, but yes, these are important bellwether signs that we mustn't ignore. So I accept your comments. Thank you.
In the end, it will be at the year end that will be the important figures to take into account. So you've moved the recommendation. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Coles? And are the Cabinet all in favour of the revenue budget monitoring report, which just kind of brings us up to date with the current position? All in favour? Agreed. Thank you very much. And the final item is also Councillor Curtis, which is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 2024-25.
Thank you, Leader. And this is my final report. To provide members with a mid-year review of Treasury management activity for 24-25 financial year. Again, replying to Councillor Crump from Overview and Scrutiny on Friday, this report has to a degree been somewhat overtaken by events. Interest rates have fallen in the first half of 24-25, and it was expected that there would be a gradual reduction in rates falling to 4% by March 2025. We'd also been advised by Link that interest rates would fall to 3.5% by December 25, but now it is likely that rates will remain higher or at least fall more slowly than previously anticipated. Mr. Burrell is in regular contact with Link Asset Services, who advise us. We'll be getting updated advice shortly, and the Cash Management Working Group will meet on November the 11th, and doubtless, Richard, there'll be an update following that meeting? Yeah. Yes, and that will feed into the budget process. Just a very small point of clarification on 2.3, just to be clear, the interest earned in first 6 months amounted to 2.17 in total. It is not 2.17 in excess of 1.14. It is 2.17 in total, which is still very good. Borrowing 3.3, the council remains internally borrowed to fund its capital investment, and it's anticipated no borrowing will be required in 24-25. I've already touched on the uncertainties following the budget announcement, so I won't mention that again, although I just have. Evidence base point 6.1, the Council employs the services of Link Group, who advise on Treasury management and investment matters. They issue rate forecasts and advise on Treasury management practices and procedures, and possess a wide expertise across the public sector. And note on the appendix, and I raised this previously, but delegation by the Council on the role of scrutiny of Treasury management strategy and policies is to a specific named body, and for this Council, the delegated body is Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This report comes with the recommendations that the Treasury management activities to date in 24-25 detailed in Appendix 1 be noted, and that the prudential indicators detailed in Appendix 1 and the compliance with all indicators be noted. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Any comments on that? If not, Councillor Crump, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just briefly. Firstly, an apology to Councillor Curtis for not welcoming him back to the meeting. He was missed on Friday. And secondly, thank him for listening in and boosting the viewing figures on Friday as well. So, I think lots of things there, and I think Mr. Perks really wanted to be an accountant in a previous life, because he came in and stepped up to the plate. I can see him nodding there vigorously how much he enjoyed his role on Friday. And I think we raised some good points. The fact about the cash management working group happening, the fact that there could be a significant impact on after the budget, and we're using that word at the moment, growth. And obviously how we can support our businesses, again, using balances, etc., from the Treasury management strategy to impact on revenue. So I think it's really important. I do it, it'd be good to come back to scrutiny sometime after the budget announcements. Well, one, after the budget announcements and the actual settlement from the government as well, to see how we are impacted and how we can mitigate that. And again, we're talking about volatility as well. Again, the cash management working group has been mentioned, and then again, an excellent report. And I'd certainly end with the fact I'm sure Mr. Perks would definitely make a good accountant. So thank you very much for that.
And Councillor Curtis, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you. Just so I thought the questions raised at overview and scrutiny and this morning have been extremely helpful. There's much we can learn to take forward. It's good that we have had the announcement of the budget. Obviously, there are uncertainties in advance of setting our own budget, but obviously that will inform how we go forward during the next few weeks setting our own budget. As Mr. Burrell has just reminded me, we have another election tomorrow, which may also have significant impact. But as I say, thank you for all the comments and suggestions that have been made, and we will take them on board. Thank you, Leader.
We have a recommendation, and you've proposed it. Councillor Wally-Huggins, that's a bit... Okay.
Sorry, it's just a comment, really, a kind comment. You'd be pleased to know, Councillor Curtis. It's just that we have lots of reports here from matters regarding the Chartered Institute of Public Finance, but we mustn't forget that we must also have heedance with with the suspicions coming through about the budget setting for councils from central government, about effects on our public and our residents. And I think that this is very good, but we must remember also the individuals' finances as members of public as well in the Stratford district area. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation which has been proposed. I'm happy to, and Councillor Coles has seconded it, and it is a report which is a very useful report that's been looks at particularly on the economic outturn, which is extremely useful to be able to look at that. This is obviously based at a national level as well as what the impact will be having locally. So it's very useful to have that. So we've got the recommendation, which has already been outlined by Councillor Curtis. Are you all happy to approve that? at Cabinet. Okay, all approved? Thank you very much indeed. And moving on, we now have issues arising from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think quite a lot of them have been covered by Councillor Curtis in particular, but I think you've got one more, Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Councillor. Just very help and support and information on this matter. We did have the portfolio holder from the County Council for Highways to talk, go through for an hour on various different items. We went down the route of asking questions in advance, well, some of us did, to try and elicit significant answers. And we've had Councillor Johnson, myself and Councillor Keithley put some in, and we got some really good answers that are going to form part of the minutes. And then some complex questions were asked on the day, which was unfair to answer straight away. And we've got a commitment from the County Council that those questions will be answered in detail as well, and they will form part of the minutes. So I think if we can refer residents to the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the 1st of November, there will be some significant details about highways issues, the processes, and what things have to happen, particularly in the villages regarding vehicle-activated signs, etc. I think there's some really good points on. So if we could ask, and if we could promulgate that information, that sounds a good word, I don't know what it means, and that would be really helpful. And again, I think it was one of the better external scrutiny items, because we did a lot of preparation, and the portfolio holder in that case, or the external speaker, was able to provide comprehensive answers. And I think that's the whole point of scrutiny, is to get as much meaningful information from them in the easiest and quickest way. And then in the same way we have questions to full council, to put forward questions, get a written response, and then to do a supplementary question. I think that is one way we should be going in the future. So I think that was one of the successes of Friday's meeting. So I'll talk about blowing our own trumpet, but I think that was really positive. So
thank you very much indeed for that update. That's very, very helpful. We're now moving on to Cabinet committees. There are none to report, and then party is on block items, and there was no requests made for anything to be raised under this before the meeting started. So therefore we've got the items on the Member Development Working Group is passed on block. That really is it for the Cabinet. So thank you very much indeed for attending today. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the officers for attending also. Really appreciated. And then just bring in the Deputy Chief Executive. You
just to
raise
confirm
something?
for the sake of the minutes that there was no urgent business to report to Cabinet today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely, no urgent business raised. And just after the meeting is closed, I want to make sure that all of you stay in the room for an announcement to be